Okay, everyone, I'm going to go ahead and get started. This session is being recorded, and I will send the recording out. I will send it to Melissa Pearson, and she will make sure that you all have access to it as well. So as we're going through today, do not feel obligated to take extensive notes, or if there's something we skip over, you can certainly question me. We can use the chat for questions, and if you all can remain muted just to avoid disruption, and I will monitor the chat as well. I will also leave some time at the end of the presentation for question and answer as well. And we can jump right in that way. So just to get started, today we will go over all things related to analytics in the Navigate platform. Here's the roadmap I have that we'll discuss today. We'll discuss the 4 types of analytics. We'll talk about how they're used for student interventions, for student coaching, for staff optimization, and for decision making. And then we'll leave the last section of the time for wrap up and next steps and any questions that you all may have. So here are the 4 main types of use cases for analytics. We normally find that staff will use them to develop student interventions. And this is where we will see the type of analytics where you can run certain campaigns, which I will show through the population health dashboards. And then after running that campaign, you can measure the impact of it through our intervention analytics. And then we also have the student coaching piece. And this is to help advisors and success coaches and different stakeholders who communicate with the students to use our predictive model to coach students. I will go over how you all will see a stoplight on a student's profile, so you will see whether they are red, green, or yellow, and how to use those numbers, that predicted risk level to inform what type of action to take with the student. Then we have the opportunity where you can make policy decisions using our institution reports, which you all had access to in Foundation. It'll still be that same way, as well as the predictive model that you all saw on student profiles in Foundation as well, if you were a Foundation user. And finally, we have analytics for staff optimization. So this is where we can see those activity analytics. I will show you how they're showed in different heat maps. And so we can think about when is the best time to offer our services, and are we triaging populations properly for our staff members. So traditionally, we've seen that normally we will have our student pool as an advisor or a faculty member, and you will normally just try to see as much of your students as possible. This is what we saw in the collaborative, however, with no intention or no strategic use for targeting a specific population. So what I'm going to show you in a second, I'm going to hop in and out of this presentation to go into the platform and demonstrate certain things for you. But we will show strategic campaigns that you can run on students based on what research has told us, and that way you can get an immediate return on education, as opposed to running a blind campaign and seeing how many students you can meet with. If we strategically meet with students that we know have been historically at risk, or students who have certain tags or categories and we historically know information about those, we find that we get better results. One of our most infamous campaigns have been a re-enrollment campaign. We find that students, the #1 indicator for attrition in a student is that they have not registered for the next semester. So by running this re-enrollment campaign across the collaborative, we have seen numerous gains in revenue, in student retention, and in things of that sort. And we have a quick way where you can run this campaign because we built it into one of our dashboards. And that is what I'll demonstrate next. We have population health analytics. And what this dashboard does is it allows you to see your entire student body in aggregate, and then you can filter down on populations and pull that list of students directly from the dashboard and take a specific intervention. Now, after you have taken that intervention, we then go into intervention effectiveness analytics that'll allow for you to be able to measure the impact of the intervention that you took on the student, again, so you can close that loop. So that'll be the first thing that I'll demonstrate for you all. So this is going into your site, into the University of Houston site. And if you see along these ideographs on the left, for you all on the line, you can either follow along with me or you can just watch. Again, this is being recorded. And remember to put any questions in the chat. But under the Analytics tab, the first thing you'll see here is the Population Health Dashboard. So once I go in here, this tells me that for the fall 2018 semester, there are 38,381 undergraduate students enrolled at University of Houston. Of those students, they have an average 3.03 cumulative GPA and 89% credit completion. I can also see here their predictive profile based on that predictive risk model as well. So I see that 19,000 of the students are marked green compared to our historical population. On the left side here is where you will see all the filters that you can use to filter down on this population. As I said, right now we're showing the entire student population, but if I wanted to see only the academic excellence students here, for example, like this, then it will drill down on that population for me. So you can drill down by category, by any tags, and categories are pulled directly from PeopleSoft for you all. Their classification, their transfer status, college, major, degree, or concentration. You can also see if they're assigned to a specific role or staff member. Now, even though staff members are populating in the site, I do know that we don't have PeopleSoft assignments for you all. And then you can also see of a certain appointment, you can pick advising, who did not attend their appointment here. So I can say of all the interventions that have been scheduled, who missed their appointment, and I can pull that population from here. I'm going to go back in and add off filters. Now, the first key campaign you can run from Population Health Dashboards, you can say, of the students enrolled in fall 18, who is not graduated and is not enrolled for spring 2019? And these are the list of students here. So here you can easily run a re-enrollment campaign from this data here. And all of this information is exportable. You can download as an Excel file. I can also quickly pull a list of students who have a GPA under a 2.0. So I can quickly pull that list of probation students. I can also see whose last term GPA is below their cumulative GPA. So what students are trending downward in their GPAs? Here I can pull the list of students who missed one success marker for it being below the grade threshold. Then I can pull a list of students who are at risk for satisfactory academic progress, so whose credit completion is under 67%. We know at this point these students are at risk of losing their financial aid, so you can pull this list of students and work with the financial aid department immediately from here, or collaborate with the financial aid department to run a campaign just in case students have to fill out a SAP appeal or things of that sort. You can also see students who missed a success marker because they didn't register for the appropriate course at the appropriate time. And then those students who have above 120 credits, making sure they're on track for graduation, making sure that they have their degree plans run. These are normally what these students are exported for. And this last one is your 15 to finish campaign. This will tell you all of your students who are currently attempting under 15 credits, so you can quickly pull that list as well. Any questions about the home page of Population Health Dashboards? Okay. I'll now go into the second tab, which is called Academic Performance. This tab will give you all academic information for the student, so all GPA metrics. So here I have the buckets of their cumulative GPA. So after you narrow down to your specific population of interest, if you're interested in students based on a certain GPA bucket, you can pull that list here. Let's say if you're looking for a list of students for a scholarship, or if you're looking for a list of students for a certain intervention, you will have access to that information here. On this side, this will show you the GPAs based on the difference in their last enrolled compared to their cum. So you can see students who are trending downward in their GPA, as well as students who are improving. So if you want to seek out students for mentorship programs, or if you want to give kudos to students, you can pull this list from here as well. Also, after filtering down on your population, you can see the total numbers of Ds and Fs from your students, as well as students who missed a success marker for that below the grade threshold here. The final tab I will go to is labeled Academic Progress, and this gives all information as it relates to credits and credit completion. So here for a specific population, I can see their credit completion percentages to make sure that our students are earning all the credits that they attempt. And again, I can see those earned buckets of credits as well as the attempted here. And I can also see course progress and the number of withdrawals from a course, as well as how many times a student repeated a course. And right now this is showing as no data, but we will check on this as well. So if you're looking at, these dashboards provide a lot of information and a lot of campaigns. And we always think if you're looking to take an intervention with your population, think of your strategic priorities first. And then right on this page, we have a graphic, which my pop-up blocked, 1 second. But we have this graphic here that provides 61 campaign ideas. So as you're looking at all of this data on your student, and if you're unsure of where to start or what action to take, I will first think of what is the goal of your specific department or your specific caseload. And then you can look here for inspiration if you're looking for a campaign, or you can run at any of these directly from the dashboard as well. Any questions about the Population Health Dashboard? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So this is just basically like a database, right? And you're simply just showing up queries on the existing database or the existing body of students. There's no element of predictive analytics or anything like that. It's just a straight database lookup, correct?
Well, in a sense, so you're exactly right. We have one source of truth, and our source of truth is your PeopleSoft student information system. What makes this predictive is the predictive profile on students. So that predictive model that we run, it's embedded in the platform and it shows up throughout different ways. So you can see this predictive profile. And to see most of the students red in the 0 GPA bucket seems appropriate. And so if you're segmenting your caseload by risk or by color or things of that sort, you can also run at your students here. So say, for example, for your particular department, say if it was at the College of Business, if you wanted to run all of the students who had a high predictive risk, you can pull that list from here as well.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
So what is this risk based on?
Yes. So the predictive model, the outcome that we have trained for you all is graduation in 6 years. So what we did is we took 10 years of your historical data and we saw for the students who did not graduate and for the students who did graduate, what were the top predictors that got them to that specific destination. And then we look for those predictors in your current students and we assess them a risk score based on that data. So this model basically says historically, all of your students with a 0.0 GPA were at higher risk of graduating. And so this is why we are training your current students for that risk.
So which set of students are the best for, because somebody has a 0.0 GPA, they're hopeless cases, right? You just kind of give up on them, right? Is that what the idea is, or is there a particular sweet spot in this where you go after those students and they can be rescued?
That is a great question. So we never want you to interpret this risk model as a complete fate. It is not a crystal ball. It just shows correlations between your historical population. So while a student may be marked red, it does not mean that we should give up on them, but it may mean that they're in a traditionally rigorous major, or it could be a bunch of different contextual factors that buy into that. And so that's what I'll be going through in this training as well. We want to be mindful in how we interpret this risk score, and also on a student's profile, you will be able to see what influencers are influencing that risk so you can understand it better. So it's not just some type of arbitrary color that you have to guess about, but you can really, really see what were the predictive influencers. But depending on your institutional context, we wouldn't recommend just giving up on the students that are red. It may be something that we need to figure out about that population, or it may be some type of context that we have about it. So I definitely wouldn't say count students out who are red, but just do a little more digging to understand what that student looks like academically, socially, are they engaged, and figure out those factors.
So the question is, what does this system bring to bear that a departmental advisor cannot currently access? What is new in all this?
Well, I am not sure do you currently have access to all of your student data in this form?
All the student data is accessible, but I don't know in what form, quite frankly.
Yes. Well, of course, you do have information. You do have access to your student information in PeopleSoft. The point of this is to make your workflow easier. So we just aggregate it and we place it in a dashboard. So again, you can quickly pull a list of students. We know that you all are busy, so why spend time knowing queries and looking through PeopleSoft with certain things when we already have the scripts built in place so you can quickly pull those lists?
Okay. So it's a workload issue for advisors?
Yes, as well as faculty and different stakeholders. This platform is extremely configurable with the different things that it can do. So we seek to involve as many stakeholders, of course, in a phased approach, but as many stakeholders as possible because we want to create a coordinated care network.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
All right. And I also saw that there was a question on the line on, can you create a watch list from the list that we export? Yes, you can, and that is exactly what we recommend. We recommend clicking on this list and exporting it, and then going right into your list and searches tab here and uploading the list. And you can upload a watch list here.
How's it going?
Good. Should I put your name on there?
Put my name. That's not true.
Are there any other questions from Population Health Dashboard? All right. So after you have used the Population Health Dashboards or any personal campaign or watch list of your own to run a specific intervention, we then have the intervention effectiveness tool so you can assess what type of impact that intervention had on the student. So here you can run an intervention on one population over one time period. So if you would like to monitor the persistence and academic and credit completion of one cohort, this is where you can find that information. You also can monitor the effectiveness over two populations in one time period. So say, for example, if you run an intervention, but you have a control group or another group of students that you want to compare to, or that you did not have this intervention for, you can compare two populations over one time period. And finally, you can compare two populations over two time periods. So say if you run a re-enrollment campaign this fall, and then you run it again with different marketing or a different cohort, and you just want to see the impact that has, you would run this one here. So I'm just going into comparing two populations with one time period. Here is where you would select the time period. So if you want to know for students who came in fall 2017 and who are still here this semester, and then you will pick your population. You can either pick an appointment campaign that you ran, the status, whether a student attended or not of that campaign, or any specific watch list that you all create. You can also search on this based on tags or category or academic information, a degree, college, classification, or those GPA buckets. And then you would select the same information here. And this is the data that it will tell you. It will tell you for population A versus population B, this is how many were enrolled at the start, and this is how many were enrolled at the end of fall 2018. So here is your persistence rate for that specific population. Keep in mind, I did not select anything, but I'm just going through for sample purposes, but I did not filter down on the population. You can also see that information for population B. You can also see of either of your populations who graduated and who stopped out as well. Then you can see the performance summary of those students. You can see their cumulative GPA as well as their term GPA. And their attempted, earned, and credit completion percentages as well. And then you can see at the end of the term, did students improve, did they remain neutral, or did their GPA decline? And we also have trend graphs for GPA and credits represented below as well. And all of this information can be exported. But this is a quick way for if you're running a certain appointment campaign and you just want to monitor the effectiveness of your campaign, or if you have saved a specific watch list that you pulled from Population Health Dashboards and you want to see of this watch list who persisted to the next term and what was their average GPA, or if you ran a credit, if you ran a specific tutoring campaign and you want to see if that helped improve GPA rates, this will be the place where you can get those immediate metrics based on the interventions that you run. So I see we have a question on the line that says, can we run a campaign and track intervention effectiveness without appointments integrating in the campaign? So a messaging campaign. So you cannot send a campaign without the appointment link. So all campaigns will have that appointment aspect to it. If you're not sending it in a campaign form, you can either use a watch list or you can run it by tag or category. So if there is a specific group of students that you messaged and you create a watch list from that, then you can monitor that here under the watch list campaign, which this brings up a really good point that while using this tool, we always ask end users to be mindful of your naming conventions. That way you can easily run it. So if you create a watch list, probably name it with your first initial, last name, cohort, and reason with underscores in between. That may be a consistent naming convention across campus. That way, as you all are using it, it's not confusing as to which watch list you should assess or things of that sort. So that is something that you all could think of. It's just consistent naming conventions for appointment campaigns or watch lists based on departments. Any other questions on that? Yes. The question on the line says, any watch list that is created can pull up as an option? Yes. Yes, your watch lists are public and we are able to see all campaigns. I'll ask Priya. Priya, do you know if we can make watch lists private? And if not, I do know that we will talk with Melissa after this about who all has access to intervention effectiveness if we're not able to make it private.
That's a good question. I'm not sure off the top of my head if we can make it private, but that is something that we can look into.
Thank you. And also there's a question on, can you filter a watch list? You're unable to. So you would have to select the watch list as is for here. So if you know that you want to run an intervention effectiveness analysis on a specific watch list and it's not filtered down how you want, you may want to recreate it, resave it, and then run the analysis from here. These are all excellent questions. Please feel free to keep asking them. Any other questions on this before I go back into the deck? All right. So I'm just quickly going to a student profile to give you all context of what I'm about to discuss before going back into the deck. But here's where you'll find the predicted risk level for a student. And once you select View Detail, here is where it will give you the predictive influencers. Now, they are not set up for you all because we are currently in the process of renewing your predictive model. And once we renew it, then it will have all of those influencers show. And it will be done by next spring, and we'll inform you all when that is complete. But I just wanted to show you all that here is where you will find the predicted risk level for a student, and we have the option to view what influencers are influencing that risk. And as well as we have the student view option, where it will turn off that risk level on a student's profile if you ever have to share this screen with a student. So going back into the presentation, I'm now going to the analytics that informs student coaching. We'll use that predictive model, which I explained earlier. That model informs the back end. And again, that model is based all on how your students have historically performed. We'll take that model and we'll place it on the student's profile, and it'll preempt students. It's basically for a proactive intervention with the student. So you can identify and reach out to students with moderate or high predicted support levels in their specific major, or you can layer on different filters as well, as you can see in that population health dashboard. Then you take that list of students and we think of some type of triage process of how to build urgency and convince the student to act or change. And then once we meet with the student, we use those support predictions. However, we use them in a very strategic way. And here is the wording that we like to think of. So again, we don't want you to only meet with red students. We don't want you to ignore your intuition. You all work with these students best, so you have the context again. And we don't want you to make all of your red students switch to green as if that will imply that it is clear. Because again, our predictive model has over 64 influencers that take into account socioeconomic status, academic information, pre-enrollment information. So there can be a lot of factors influencing a risk score. So we want to be very careful about how we advise students based on this. So we like to use those support levels to strategize which students we may have to monitor more heavily, because again, it doesn't mean that they're going to automatically stop out, but it just means that they need more support. We like to use the support predictions to explore major options on the Major Explorer. So if a student is red and we find that the influencer is their major, and let's say it's a chemistry major, and we know traditionally chemistry majors have a hard time of graduating, especially if they do not pass a chemistry 1211 course or something of that sort. So we will use those success markers on a student's profile to think of risk, as well as that risk score to think of, can we put you in some type of supplemental instruction or some type of tutoring, and make sure that we have the full picture of the student before advising them based on just the color alone. We know that this predictive model is a very important tool to help you all with triaging your students, but we want to help you all remain empowered as the stakeholder, as the staff member, as the advisor, success coach, or faculty member working with the student. Again, we trust that you all know best. So again, we always want you to be mindful of how to interpret that red, yellow, and green, and never tell students that this is what the data says or this is what it's saying about you, because that can be extremely demoralizing, especially for first generation students. We find that they often suffer from imposter syndrome, meaning they don't feel that they belong because they know that it was difficult for them to get there, or they haven't seen others there like them in their family. So they already have so much self-doubt. And sometimes when we put that predictive risk score on them, it can be extremely demoralizing. So just being mindful again of how we're communicating that score and only using it for our interpretation. Places where you will find that, and I will zoom in here. is on this unpacking risk. Here is an example of what it will look like once we have you all's new predictive model ready. But based on the predictive risk score, this student example, this student predictive risk was a medium. And negative influencers were lifetime accumulated credits, major skill alignment, and number of current majors. Neutral influences were their transfer student, proportion of transfer credits, and positive influencers were their GPA and their DF count, the number of Ds and Fs that they have. So all of the influencers that will come will be related to performance, progress, program of study, and pre-enrollment. You will never get influencers regarding like socioeconomic status and things of that sort, because we only want to give you actionable items to advise the student on, and students can't help their social identity. So you'll often see how a GPA is influencing that score, how their progress to degree is influencing it, how their specific major or college and any pre-enrollment information we have are the common predictors that you will see. And on the profile as well, we have where you see the download the guide. Again, you can download this guide directly from the platform to understand how we define those predictors as well. Or you can hover over them for data definitions. If you see a dotted line under a word, it normally means that you can hover over it and you'll get that data definition right from the platform as well. Any questions about this? Okay. I'll now go into the analytics that we use to inform staff optimization. And this is right here where we see activity dashboard right under the analytics section. So this will tell me for the past 180 days, and if we go down to past 30 days, this will tell me all of the appointments created in the site and with how many distinct students. I can also filter down if I only want to look for advising, tutoring, or other appointments once we think of other care units. And I can also filter by location if I want to see the appointments and students who met at a specific location, or by staff member or meeting type, or a specific reason or student service as well. And I can see if a report was filed with that student. I can also filter down on student information based on their classification, category, or tag as well. It will tell me how many appointments were created, how many distinct students, how many were scheduled, how many students dropped in, if there were no-shows, and cancellations. And all of this information can be pulled from here as well. This information can be exported as well. I can see attendance by week, day, and hour. We normally see leadership use this to think of scheduling, to think of office hours, to think of what is the most optimal time. If we notice that our drop-in numbers are very high, should we just run an appointment campaign for times that students normally drop in just to get them in the habit of scheduling appointments? And then we also see that heat map as well. I saw an instance where an advisor used this heat map to think of blackout hours, to ensure that staff aren't going to lunch during a certain time, or to make sure that they have that time clear, because that is where we see the majority of our students. I have a question that says, do cancellations show who canceled? Yes. Once you export this list, yes, you can pull that information. See, it's not downloading. I will check on that. But yes, you should be able to pull the list of students directly from here. And wouldn't the heat map be influenced on advisors' availability? And yes, you are right. It would be influenced by that. And I'll get in reporting too and show where reports can run those. But on this tab, you can also see all of the communications sent to specific students in aggregate, emails, texts, and calls, if they're being stored. For this. Let's see, appointment type. So there was a question, can you see appointments that are not booked? And we have a report for that, so I will show that next. Because immediately from this dashboard, you cannot. So let me show you that in the reporting section. This is where we can see the appointment summaries, but this report will tell you students who did not, students who have an appointment and students who do not. You can also see the cancellation summaries from here. When someone asks, can we show who canceled? This would be the cancellation report from here. So that dashboard, that shows the activity analytics, either by user or by location. But if you want to get more into details of what is taking place during advising meetings, this is the appointment summary report that you can run. And again, you can filter this in the same way that you would advanced search. You can filter by location, by care unit, by service and team. Wait on this to load. But this would be a good report. And again, all of these you can export and you can filter to get the information that you're looking for. But this could be when you find out what reasons are majority of your students coming in for, and what type of follow-up, if you want to think of intervention from here. But if you look across the top, you can filter this down by specific categories that students are in, the type of appointment reason, the reasons and the reported reasons, whether it was walk-in or a scheduled appointment. And then based on how you all's appointment summary report is configured, you can see responses to each of those questions. So if you want to filter on a certain question answer as well, you can do that from this report. Another really good report you can run is the notes report. This report allows you to search on specific text. If there is a text that you're looking for on students, or you can search by note reason, or again, you can just pull the entire report, export the information, and filter as needed as well. I'll also show the cancellation reasons report. It's thinking. All right. Well, for the sake of time, I'll just go over a few other reports. You can run reports on your alerts and cases as well. I often run this report and export this data and do a pivot table to see to quickly see how many students show up for each alert reason, if you're interested in that information. And it's a good practice if you're thinking of auditing your alerts. We don't have any in the site yet. Are there any questions about the reporting or the activity analytics? Okay. And just remember that the dashboard is used just to pull those quick numbers of appointments by user or location, and then go into the reports if you want deeper information about what types of students canceled, what took place at appointments, and any other information on alerts or case reasons, was a case opened, who issued it, and all of that information. All right. So the final analytic I'll show is our institution reports. And this is where we take that historical information. Again, it's the same historical data, 7 to 10 years, and we place it into these reports so that you can understand historical trends about your student population. And so now I'll show those, and that is here. Okay, so this is the institution reports homepage. And once I go, this is where I am in your platform where your current cohorts of students lie. But once I go into institutional reports, think of this as a time machine where only your historical populations of students lie. So I am able to see the impact that certain attributes have on graduation rates. I'm able to see the impact that certain courses or grades earned in courses have on graduation rates. And finally, I'm able to see the impact of a major change or a college switch. All of these reports are queried based on the 4 filters at the top. So I can select whether a student has ever graduated or if they graduated in 4, 6, or 8 years. I can query my entire population, or I can look at transfers or non-transfers only. And then here is where I look for cohorts who were first enrolled between. So our data goes from fall 2007 up until spring 2012, all cohorts enrolled in between there. And again, we leave this 6 years out because we don't want to include any students who may have not graduated yet to avoid skewing the data. And then here, I am able to select all majors, or I can select a specific college. So I'm going to select a business major. Well, actually, I'll select architecture and select the first report here. So here, this report tells me the first year GPA, the graduation rate based on the first year GPA of students in architecture, so who are architecture majors. I have a question that says, if it is only from 2007 through 2012, 6 years, what is the function of an 8-year graduation rate? That is a good question. So these are static. These are not configurable for institutions. So regardless of how your historical data shows, these options will always be in your drop-down. So that is the reason why. So yes, for you all, you wouldn't use an 8-year graduation rate if you don't have 8 years of data. But those drop-downs are just standard for every institution, the 4, 6, or 8 years. We also leave them there because each year, as we refresh your IR, we will pull in an additional cohort. So next year, this will go up a year and consequently each year. So eventually you will be able to layer on that 8-year graduation rate if needed. Any other questions with that? And we see that 8-year graduation rate will tell us more about student persistence past the 6-year mark. And again, we can look into pulling that information. I know we're getting your refreshed historical data for building this current predictive model. So this is something that we can always revisit, and we're always refreshing your data annually. So we can continue to look at it. And there are other ways to monitor persistence in the platform. So if you all create a tag or category or watch list for a specific cohort, and again, you want to monitor their persistence, you can do that in the intervention effectiveness as well. And it says, is this data the student as an architecture student during that time period? That at any time the student was an architecture, oh, yes, let me explain that. So the question is asking this, I'll just go into the graph to explain it better. But this is the first year GPA, the graduation rates based on first year GPA for architecture students. So if I hover over this GPA bucket here, that says 3.8 to 3.99, it tells me that 37% of these students graduated as an architecture student. Now, an additional 4.2 graduated in the College of Architecture, but from a different major. And then an additional 29.2% graduated from a completely different major in college, for a total 70.8% compared to the institution's total, which is 84%. So to answer your question, the different shades of blue show where the student's destination upon graduation. And if you ever want to see where they landed, you will look at this major change analysis, which I'll go over, that will show you students who transferred from architecture, where did they go and what was their success in that subsequent major. Any other questions on that part? Okay. So here is where we have the histogram that shows. So if you're only interested in students from architecture, you can also remove certain grayed out portions as well. But normally we see academic leaders or different stakeholders use this to see if you're underperforming or overperforming compared to the institution, and also using these first year GPA buckets to think of proactive interventions. Since we know that this is what happened historically, should we think of something for our students in this GPA bucket from a 3.8 to a 3.99? Normally we would think, since they have a high GPA, that they're successful, but they seem to be transferring out of this major. Do we need to figure out what is happening here? Below each histogram, We have the N values as well. That'll show the number of students in each bucket. We always tell stakeholders to be sure to check these to make sure that your data is statistically significant. And then every data point represented on the graph is also represented below that you can export, and you can marry to other data, or you can think of visually representing it differently as well. Other attributes that you can look at are second year GPA, transfer status, pre-enrollment information, and then credit information. So let's go to first term. This is where we can see the first term earned credits at an institution. And we see, based on the institution's grad rates, students who earned 15 to 18 credits their first term graduated at 79%. Students who earned below that graduated at 74%, and students who earned below 12 credits graduated at 61%. And using that information to inform our 15 to finish campaigns, because we understand historically that the more credits our students are likely to earn, the more likely they're able to be successful. I'm going to go into, let's select business. I'll now go into the course analysis report. So this shows, for students with the accounting major, here is their graduation rate and the 10 most attempted courses in that major. So we see accounting, we see stats, finance as the 10 most attempted courses, and we also see the graduation rates based on that course. We can also see the percent of D's and F's in those courses as well. So seeing that stats has a high DF rate, we may want to prioritize this course for supplemental instruction, since it was the most attempted with a high DF rate. Now you can see the 10 most attempted courses, but you can also see the 10 most predictive courses. And a predictive course is a course where students who are successful in this course have a higher likelihood of graduating compared to students who were not successful. So if we just want to see the graduation rate of the 10 most predictive courses, we can see that here. And again, we can see those percents of D's, F's, or W's as well. For that predictive course. And then below we have all of this data that can be exported. It will tell you the number of attempts. It will tell you the predictive course rank, the predictive cutoff grade, which I'll explain in a second, the average grade in the course, the average lifetime earned credits when attempting the course, so you can understand the academic maturity of a student when they're attempting the course, their graduation rate, and their percent of D's, F's, and W's. And what I'll normally do is I'll export this data and I will add the D's, F's, and W's to get a DFW rate. And then you can sort this list based on the predictive rank and based on the highest numbers of D's, F's, and W's, and prioritize those courses for intervention. This next graph I'm going into, it allows you to drill down into specific courses. So I saw that accounting was one of the most predictive courses. So if I want to look more into that, I will enter that here, and this will show me the grade distribution of that course. So students who earned an A in this course, you can see their graduation rate here. Students who earned a B have the same graduation rate. And students who earn a C, that graduation rate begins to drop by 3 points, and then it drops drastically to 66% for students who earn a D or below. So the algorithm will assign a predictive cutoff grade based on that for C, because when students earn a C or below in this course, historically their graduation rate have dropped significantly. So we normally find that stakeholders use this specific graph to think about success markers when you're developing the credit or grade threshold for a success marker. You can look here to see how have students historically performed and what is the best time to offer the course, when is the best time, what should be the cutoff grade, when will we know that students are less likely to graduate, and again, understand the average grade earned in that course if we need to think of supplemental instruction. If there is a question, is the graduation rate at UH or in this major? This is in the major. So there was a question that I said C are less likely to graduate, but isn't it a D? And yes, with the D, it's more dramatic, but it starts to drop off at that C. So it goes from 97% to 94%. And even though it's that 3% drop off, we don't think it's a lot, we still see the graduation rates decline as soon as a student earns a C or less. So it would be a best practice to flag them at a C instead of waiting to a D in order to flag that student for risk. Any other questions on this graph? Okay. The final one, let's see. I thought if the grade of C is flagged, then only Ds. Can you give me a little more context as to what you're asking? So the question was, if the grade of C is flagged, then only Ds are at risk. And no, we would want to flag from C. Do not see. I believe what you're asking is, oh, I think yes. Forgive me, but yes, if with the predictive cutoff grade is a C, then that means students who earn anything lower than a C will be flagged at risk, yes. So if you selected D as the course, then it would only flag students who earn an F as at risk. Does that answer your question? Okay, so sorry about that. Any other questions before I go to the next graph? Okay, I will now go to the major change analysis. So this is a major change analysis because I have a major selected. However, if I selected all the majors in a college, it then becomes a college change analysis. So you can see the impact of students switching colleges as well as majors. So if I want to see students, there's a question on, can the predictive grade be ran on a C minus? So yes, you can set success markers to run on a C minus or C plus or things of that sort, or the standard grade, but in institution reports, we do not have that. We only have the A, B, C, D, or F without the pluses or minuses. But when you set success markers, you can specify if you want it to be a C minus or a C plus. So if I want to see how students, where are they coming from before going into the architecture major, or if I want to see students who leave the architecture major, where are they going, I could select either of these. So there was a question earlier when I showed the first graph of how can I tell where students landed? And this will be the analysis for that. So I'm saying of students who switched from architecture, where did they go and what was their success like? So these show the students who stayed in architecture. They graduated at 69.58%. Students who left, they went into construction management and they graduated at 88%. Or they either went into industrial design, environmental design, or interior architecture. This rolled up major and unmapped major, this comes from where we do a major mapping exercise for you all, where we map all of your majors to ensure that they're up to date. And if there is any major that you all have changed, we will roll it up into that existing major. So this just signifies that there was a major that was rolled up into an existing one. And again, if you all notice any discrepancies or anything of that sort, we can always revisit and look at your major mapping as well. But here I can see the graduation rates based on the major that they switched to. And I can also see the time it will take to degree after they switch. So students who left architecture and went into construction management, it took them an additional 3.17 years to graduate after making the change. But students who went into environmental design, it only took 1 additional year. I can see students' GPA at change. Students who switched their major, they did so around a 2.9 GPA. But all students who switched their major had above a 2.0, 2.5. We can see that across the board. The question is, what is no next dropped? No next major means that they had a double major. So this means that if the student had a double major, and here they did not have one. I can see the number of years that a student changes. So after 1.6 years, they normally go into construction management. Yes, for your question, I will pull that up right after this. I'll pull up the data definitions in a second. Then we can see the buckets, the number of students in each of those buckets per change. And we can also see all of this data here. Any questions about this graph before I go on the toolkit to answer more specific questions? Okay. So right on our home page here, we have this toolkit. And this will explain just kind of how to interpret the information and where to look based on a specific insight. And I'm seeing, I'm pulling up I'm currently looking for the definition for the no next drop. 1 second, I know I have this in my, any other questions while I'm looking for this toolkit? Okay. Here's the toolkit here, which I'll also send and follow up. But here's where they have the definition for next majors. There's majors that students transition into coming out of the selected major. So no next major includes students who did not transition out of the selected major. It says that you mentioned tags. Is there more information on how those work? So tags are manual categories. So we will automatically pull categories from PeopleSoft for you all, and they'll be automated. However, a tag is something that you all can place on a student, and this is with proper permissions. It's a manual identifier that you can place on a student if we don't have another way of collecting that information automatically. So the only thing that we ask is when you make a tag is if that student is removed from that tag, just be sure to track them and clean them up to avoid the site getting messy. But we normally find that we aren't using, oh, okay. Well, I don't believe that we're going to be using tags for the University of Houston. Are there any other questions? So it looks like we have 15 minutes left. So I can use this time to go over any additional information that you all may need. Again, we have this toolkit here. I also have the institution reports toolkit that will give all of those data definitions as well. And again, if you're in the site and unsure about anything, You can always hover over for data definitions as well. The toolkit is right here. Once you select home, there should be a download button right here. And if not, I'll send it in follow up with this deck as well. Also, Melissa will be posting all of this with the recording on the Navigate resources page. Yes, she will be posting that information. All right. Well, if you all have any other questions, feel free to send those to Melissa and she'll send them to me. And let us know if you all need anything and we'll make sure that you get all of these resources and follow up. Thank you all so much. I had one more question, sorry. Why is it necessary to do appointments with campaigns? We may just want email. And the point is because the point of a campaign is to solicit students. So if you only want to send an email, we would recommend using the messaging option if you just want to send a message to the students. However, if you're looking to solicit information to the students or to get them in, then we always want to have an actionable link on there to make sure that we're getting the students in front of us. Follow-up is, but don't you always want to meet with the student, but need to get the messages out? Yes, there are just two different functions for that. If you want to meet with students, get the appointment campaign. If you only want to send a correspondence, then just use the messaging function.
And for everyone on the line, this is Priya jumping in very quickly. So apologies that I didn't introduce myself in the beginning, but my name is Priya Malhotra and I'm the launch or implementation consultant. And a few, I think, key distinctions here. So there are two different functionalities that both live within Navigate. One of them is a messaging feature that allows you to send a message to a student. It doesn't have to include a link, doesn't have to include any type of solicitation for a meeting, but it does allow you to put an attachment in there, and then also it records your correspondence that you may be having over email with the student, also in the Navigate site itself. So that's one feature, again, that you can access through Navigate called messaging. You can also mass message students. So in that way, it's very similar to the appointment campaigns. Appointment campaigns were meant specifically for active intervention. So for the idea that we are meeting with a group of students and then can track exactly which students have attended that meeting, which students have not attended that meeting. So I think when the product was initially built with that intention, the idea was that that tracking would not be as fruitful. I understand that a lot of folks have said the user interface and just the general functionality of campaigns would be very nice to have without that appointment link. So that is something that we can take to our larger team. We do have a kind of a repository of enhancement requests that are coming from Houston, Maine. So we'll be sure to continue to keep you updated if there are any changes on that. And it looks like a follow-up question is, if you are using the messaging feature, does a student have to have the app or does it go to their UH destination email? No, it'll also go to their email. You can actually either email them or send them a text message. And either way, they'll get that. If they don't have a text message or a cell phone number on file for some reason, it'll just go directly to their email instead. And if you're using the mass message, does it address the student by name? If you're using the mass message, it won't address the student directly by their name, but what it will do is it will make it so that every student is getting the email, that they're not seeing anybody else CC'd or BCC'd on it. So that's kind of the workaround there. Great. Any other questions about the appointment campaigns versus messaging? We were informed we would receive information on how to send an appointment campaign from an administrative office with links to major advising. So there would be a way to send those appointment campaigns. We did not slate time during this call to go over that particularly, but that is something that we have an entire team at UH that is being trained on. They're being trained on each feature and functionality. So happy to work with Melissa and the rest of the leadership team to make sure that everybody has that information on how to do that. Anything else before I pass it on back to Brittany? All right, thank you so much. Brittany, it's all yours.
All right, thank you so much, Priya. Thank you all again. Remember to keep those questions coming as you all digest this information if anything comes up. And we'll make sure that we get these resources out to you all as soon as possible. So thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day.